And we're live. This is section 1 of the review. As I told you, we have our books in stock now, and we're going to be doing our review. And we're going to continue to do this review so that you will have an idea of what to do for sitting for the exam. Now, mind you now, I want to do a little review so you'll understand what is really going on here. I'm dressed in my little lab coat, as you can see, and I do have my medical records shield that I had from when I first started class at College of DuPage. This is what they gave me when I went out in the field to do my internship in medical record while I was in the Registered Health Information Technician program. Before I said technology, but it's the Registered Healthcare Information Technology endorsement, and that's what I was going for. I'm now sitting for the CPC. However, it will be a little different. I will not be doing the regular CPC. I'll be doing the HCS, and that is dealing with the home health care in the OASIS category. And I'm going to go over those a little bit. I did tell you that there was AAPC. They do an endorsement, and HHIMA, and also the AHCC. And the AHCC is in the home health care endorsement, and the Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance endorses their candidates. Now, there is a whole category of medical specialty. If you are dealing with the medical specialty areas, and they are many areas, and I like to tell you some of them, the anesthesiologist, the cardiology, the evaluating and management auditing, orthopedics, pain management, radiation, and urology. Those are some specialties that you can get endorsed, and these areas you can get an endorsement through the medical specialty coding and compliance. So I am not talking about the CPC. I am not talking about the AAPC endorsement or HHIMA. I'm talking about the AHCC that is endorsed by the Medical Specialty Code and Compliance. So this is a whole different category of coding and OASIS training and coding for home health and hospice, coding for home health in the home health category, the specialty coding compliance, which the Board of Medical, Specialty Compliance. And I wanted to say that there is a number of reasons why someone would want to deal with home health, and I'm going to be elaborating on that. First of all, I am Sherelle Garth. I am an MED, which is a Master's of Curriculum Instructions. I do professional development, and one of my reasons for going back into this field is so that I can administer the continuing education hours for those candidates who are endorsed in medical coding or have one of the alphabet soups behind their name that want to keep their credentials. I do want to become a vendor of one of the either AAPC or AHCC or HHIMA's vendors to provide the continuing education classes that the candidates need in order to renew their license. So as a trainer, I kind of did things a little bit different. I got the master's first, and now I'm going back and revisiting the endorsement. I do know with the master's, I can become a supervisor because of my prior experience in supervising with Blue Cross Blue Shield and supervising those candidates who were claim processors. However, I like to have my own training class and offer my own medical terminology. As you know, I teach medical terminology. That's one of my specialty, and we're going to be mainstreaming it to medical terminology, anatomy and physiology, all done under the Dean Vaughn. And those are classes that I taught when I was at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I also worked for an organization there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, heading up their training department, developing their coding and claim processing department, and training those candidates who were claim processors. So I've had some administrative skill, as you can see. I am not looking to go into administrative work, but training and development to help build the training departments, and to also possibly have my own training contracted program where I go and do contracted work for various different companies that have a need for backlog work, or for companies who would like me to do their continuing education for their staff. So there you have a little bit about me. I am a certified teacher. I've taught college at Richland College there in Dallas, Texas. I have also taught college at Gateway Community College there in Racine, Wisconsin. And I have taught as a visiting lecturer for Purdue University. So I am an adjunct professor, and I retired with my master's degree as a professor, and that's how they categorize me. So you can address me as a professor, whether or not it was bestowed upon me as one of those delegated professors, but I did earn the right to be an adjunct. So I have spent over 5 years as an adjunct, so you definitely can address me as an adjunct. Now, one of the reasons why I am doing this is because I would like for my family members to catch on to the drift and catch on to the fact that this is one of the hottest, one of the most dynamite professions that there is. I supervise over 16 claim processes, and I had to get them through training to help them master medical terminology. And every one of them mastered 80% of the information and retained it in medical terminology. Isn't that something to brag about? Well, I didn't do it all on my own. It was a curriculum that I used that was so fantastic. And I won't go into the curriculum right now. That's a whole big nother story, but the curriculum was fantastic. And the students maintained over 80% of the medical term and was able to recall it through word association, of course. But nevertheless, I had my own program there at Dallas, at Richland College, where we were preparing students for the 1-year certificate as a coding specialist. And they had a little bit of everything. They had claim processing, how to process a claim, all the steps, and how to rescind the claim, and those difficult claims, how to work with them, how to audit that claim. And then we did everything we could with the claim. And then I placed them into internships around in the community. And I went to visit them throughout Dallas, wherever they were placed at. And they were given internships as apprentices. And they were able to work on the job as a coding specialist during their internship. And some of them could be hired during their process of internships and accept the permanent job. So that was a fantastic 1-year certificate program, which I'd like to reintroduce here to the Indiana area. It was very successful, and candidates were ready to go off to work within 1 year. So I do believe in making sure that they're good curriculums. My background prepares me to look at the curriculum, to examine it, to dissect the curriculum, to amend the curriculum, to add to the curriculum, to adapt the curriculum, to make it applicable to all of those students, even the ones who are not legible readers and who have difficulty with comprehension. And therefore, we send no one away. Everybody is remediable. You can remediate everybody's learning deficit, and everyone has their own individual IEP, their individual plan of study. So why am I here today? I am here today because I'm a long life student who is preparing for my review to sit for the exam. And I ask you to come along and support me as I take you through the review of this fantastic OASIS coding strapulation, where you are learning about coding in home health as well as coding in the hospice center and learning about Medicare and Medicaid. So there's a few new endorsements that you might not recognize that they don't have in the CPC. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the specialty codings as I gave you those specialty coding. What about specialty coding? Who endorses it? The Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance endorses the specialty coders. And what are some of the benefits? To identify yourself as a leader is one in your medical coding and clinical profession by becoming certified by the Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance. You get the recognition you need and you deserve for your expertise, and many of the coding clinical specialists certified by the Board of Specialty Coding and Compliance, called the BMSC, reports increase in respect from supervisors, colleagues, evidence that shows that advanced certification procedures are higher salary for medical coders. And I'm quoting this right from the Board of Medical Specialty Coding. And it reads, certification will help you to work more efficiently with clinicians, payers. Moreover, certified credential holders are generally, and it says, I quote, more highly compensated, receive a greater advance opportunity, and have a competitive advantage over their competitors when job-seeking healthcare providers are increasing requiring coding certification as a condition of employment. And it goes on to say, here are some of the BMS's certified coders and what they have to say, and I will quote what they're saying. Adding these BMSC credentials increased my self-confidence when speaking to physicians. I passed a test. I know what I'm talking about. And this is Michelle Fisco, in quoting her, the medical auditor manager and Reading PA Hospital. And then it goes on, and I quote, the BMS certification further validates my level of expertise, and I quote, is John, okay? He's a Suter Medical Foundation. Next, the BMCS certification gives me a sense of pride that I know my material. I have better understanding of how to explain coding materials to physicians. And this is Phyllis Burham. And she is in the business office management at Greensboro Cardiology in North Carolina. And I quote, in the quote, and I quote, it says, the BMSC certification gives you more weight with employers and your medical peers. The certification has value because in this profession, I coordinate with a lot of different people. And this is Charlotte Seenenberg. And she is the orthopedic specialist in Oregon. Now, these are some of the quotes that these ladies are saying who have gone into either taking the specialty test or the AHCC. Now, there is a fee, of course, for taking these specialty exams, and you can take them in two different places. And sometimes they are offered in person, and sometimes you can go and register online to take these exams. Now, I want to say that there is a fee, of course, for taking these exams, and sometimes they may be offered at some of the conventions, the annual advanced conventions. Like they had one at the annual Advanced Orthopedics Coding, Billing, and Reimbursement Conference and Symposium. They had one at the Advanced Cardiology Coding, Billing, and Reimbursement Symposium of 2014. They had the 15th Annual Pain Management, Billing, and Coding Compliance Submission, and the Physician ICD-10 CM Coding Summit. Now, and it goes on, the certification fees, and these are some of the fees and registration that they quote, and I quote, from the Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance. Specialty coding professional exam is $259. This is for the specialty coding. The Advanced Coding Specialist exam, the ACS, is $325. Now, prices may have changed since the last time I've updated my documentation. Certified Compliance Professionals Physician Exam, the CCPP. Now, this CCPP is indicating that you're a practitioner. And after you have been in the profession for so long, I think that P comes off, and that's $259. And if you want to retake it and you didn't score over 70 to 75% and have to retake it, then it's $99. If you're interested in taking any of the home care credentialing exams, which is what I'm going to take, you must contact the AHCC and certification. Registration fees cover the exam, the credentialing by Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance. The recertification fees, and here's the recertification fees, and the bilingual recertification fees, and the SCP and CCP-P credential holder is $149 for the retake. And the ACS credential holder is $229 for the recertification fee. Registration for the BMSC exam can be taken in many ways. You can choose whichever is convenient for you. They offer exams in selected in-person conference at the computer-based testing center operated by PSI system. Taking the test in person. Many candidates like to attend in-person conferences. You can attend the conferences and take these exams. Or educational events such as symposium. You could plan to take them right there and pay for them in advance to ensure that you have the knowledge needed to take the BMSC certification exam. Find an up-and-coming live conference, okay? Taking the test at a testing center for ACS, SCP, and CCP candidates only. Candidates who prefer to take the exam online must go to a computer-based testing center. You no longer can take exams in your office or with a self-selected proctor. BMSC and CBT partners is PSI system. There are more than 600 locations around the country where you can take these exams. To register, take your exam. To register to take your exam, you can register online, download the registration form, and fax it to BMSC at 301-287-2535. And that is for the specialty exam. Now, the Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance is the premier provider of specialty medical coding, certification, education, and training for medical coders, clinicians, and company professionals across the home health, physician, and compliance field. BMSC is dedicated to creating and advancing a career ladder for medical professionals through multiple layers of coding and compliance, education, certification, and training. And it talks about getting certified today. Our skill-based exams are written by coders for coders, it says. And recertification, keep your compliance and specialty coding certification active. After 1 year of certification, continue to strengthen your medical coding skills through continuing education units. And that's where I come in. I will help you strengthen those through continuing education units called CEUs. Learn more about the BMS's recertification process, as I told you. Okay. Now, there is an application, a registration form for the physician specialty, and you can go online and download that specialty application and form and fill out that application and pay your fee. Now, there's 3 different ways you can pay. It's through mail, and you can also call them over the phone or fax it. Now, there are tons of conferences going on around the continent for coding and the ultimate coding of OASIS. And this is something I'm breaking you into the OASIS coding to prepare to tackle the YF 2019 is what we were talking about earlier. A code changes and work through the new coding and guidelines for ever-changing OASIS C2 guidance. And the margin for error is great, wider, so don't get left behind insufficient or no training at all. And that's why I'm here to let you know that this area of specialty is open as well, home health care and OASIS and hospice. And a lot of us know that the baby boomers are now going to stay in skilled nursing facilities. They are going to stay in assistive nursing facilities where they're giving some assistive, and they take their insurance that they have or their plans that they have for long-term care, and they check themselves in to these long-term facilities, and they pay through their insurance policy. But do they have enough money? Do they need to access OASIS by getting Medicare and Medicaid? Now, I am of the age of Medicare and Medicaid, so I'm very interested and familiar with this category of coding because I have had to dabble into working through the system and the maze, and I want to help you navigate through the system. If you are 62 and older and you're receiving Medicare and Medicaid, these are the categories of specialty of OASIS that deals with that. Now, this program prepares approval by the Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance, called the BMSC. And this is where OASIS for advanced ICD-10, well, intermediate ICD-10, basic ICD-10, and advanced ICD-10. I'll be referring to intermediate ICD-10. And we're going to get right into the book in a few minutes. And let me just go over a few other things before we get tied into that. Okay. The Decision Health's ultimate coding and an OASIS training is the answer to your ICD-10 coding and OASIS challenges, is what it reads. This series provides ICD-10 coding training and OASIS-2 education led by the top home health experts. And this is what it's saying at one of their conference. And I'm going to be preparing to go to one of the conference. The acronyms is the HCS-D and the HCS-O, the HCS-H. HCS-O is for the OASIS, HCS-H is for the home health care, and the HCS-C is for the hospice. Okay. Let's see if I have anything else in here. Okay. And there's some ethical standards that they have as a guideline They have a handbook, a candidate handbook, and you definitely want to get a copy of that and read it so you can resolve any ethical issues that you might have, misuse of work, conflict between ethics and law, uh, competence. Now, there are the boundaries of competence. And it says here, professional coders will provide services and teach only within the scope of their competence, based on their education, training, study, or professional experience. Lifelong learning, professional coders will work to develop and maintain their competence. Human relation. Discrimination. In their work-related activities, professional coders do not engage in unfair discrimination based on age, gender identity, race, ethnicity, culture, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, disability, social economic status, or basis prescribed by law. And I quote, they talk about your sexual harassments. It's a whole category in the handbook on that. Other harassments, avoiding the harm, conflict of interest, such as, and I quote, professional coders will not take on a professional role when personal, professional, legal, financial, or other interests that could reasonably be expected to impair their objectivity, competence, or effectiveness, expose the organization to harm or exploitation. Professional coders will not accept any gift, gratitude, payment, or other inducements from anyone that would call into question the objectivity and validity of their work production. So they have this handbook that you must read about the privacy of confidentiality, the expertise in other public statements, such as avoidance of false or deceptive statements that might be made. And I quote, and it says, public statements include but not limited to paid, unpaid advertising, certification, application, other credential application, brochures, printing material, directory listing, personal resumes, or public comments such as print or electronic transmission, statements in legal proceeding, lectures and public and presentation, and published material. Professional coders do not make false, deceptive, or fraudulent statements concerning their training, experience, or competence, and their credentials, or their institutional or associate affiliation. And end of quote. Media presentation, they talk about record keeping and fees and financial arrangement, accuracy in reports to prior and funding sources, education and training, accuracy in teaching, student disclosure, standard tests. Now that's just some of what's in the candidate handbook. I won't go into all of it, but once you get a copy of your candidate handbook, you need to read it. And you need to go through everything that it says you shouldn't or should not do. And anyone that's going into taking the exam under the BMSC, they must read the handbook and adhere to it and sign off on it, because there is a code of ethics that you must follow. Now, here's some frequent questions that might be asked. What is recertification? And I quote, it says, recertification, maintenance of recertification is a process that ensures HCS-D certified professionals demonstrate ongoing competence in the domain area in which they are certified through self-assessment, review, maintenance, or enhancement activities. Question number 2, end of quote, and it says, beginning of quote, what are self-assessment reviews? Self-assessment reviews are 2, computer-based assessments that are demonstrated competencies in regulatory changes occurring within the previous 12 months. The assessments may take more than once to achieve a passing score. Each self-assessment contains 15 questions. A proctor is not required. End of quote. Beginning of quote. What is certification maintenance? Certification maintenance, also known as credential maintenance, is the completion of the educational program that provides updated training and skills to allow continued competence in home health coding by earning the required number of CEUs in any of the HCS-D domain. End of quote. Beginning of quote. What is certification enhancement? And it began to quote, and it says, certification enhancement is the completion of educational programs that results in expanded knowledge and skill to enhance professional growth in home health coding by earning additional CEUs in specific HCS-D domain. This is beyond the requirement to maintain certification. End of quote. Beginning of quote. And it reads, what is the initial recertification cycle? Begin to quote. The initial recertification for new credential certificates first obtaining credentials began the day after the credential is awarded and inactive for 1 year until the anniversary of that certification date in the following year. End of quote. Beginning to quote. What do I need to do in order to recertify or maintain my certification status? And to begin the quote, it says, to recertify or maintain your certification, you need to earn and report your required 20 CEUs within your recertification cycle. 20 CEUs are obtained by completing 2 online self-assessments. Each assessment provides 5 CEUs and additional maintenance education providing 10 CEUs. It is important that all annual CEUs are earned between your anniversary date and expiration date of the current 12-month cycle. End of quote. And are there any questions? Well, I'll continue. Another question they asked, beginning the quote, how can I earn BMSC CEUs? BMSC, and I quote, offers many opportunities to earn CEUs through meetings, study guides, webinars, distance learning courses, and other activities that qualify for CEU. For additional information on these opportunities, please visit the BMSC website, end of quote. And there where I would come in at, I would be offering and helping to monitor those CEUs for the benefit of renewing their license. Beginning to quote, do CEUs earned through organization other than BMSC qualify? Beginning to quote, yes, BMSC accepts CEU earned through other organizations provided that they qualify as a valid CEU activities and are relevant to home health care, end of quote. Beginning to quote, I can earn BMSCS CEUs by earning another BMSC CEU certification. No, beginning to quote, at this time, BMSC has not designated this as a valid CEU activity, end of quote. Beginning to quote, how can I find out how many BMSC CEUs I have earned so far? Beginning to quote, certificate manages and tracks their CEUs. Okay, certificates manage and track their CEUs through their own credentialing holder account on the BMSCS website, end of quote. What should I do with my CEU documentation, end of quote. BMSC does not require CEU's documentation at the time of recertification. You should submit your recertification application and the company fees on the BMSC website After recording the requirement number of CEUs in your tracker, save all CEU documentation for one full calendar year following the date of your certification renewal in case you are selected for a random audit. End of quote. Beginning of quote, do CEUs carry over from one reporting period to another? No. Beginning of quote, you can only report CEUs earned during the current recertification cycle. End of quote. Now, and here's some more questions. And it says here, and I quote, what if I don't have enough CEUs in the recertification or maintenance of my recertification? Beginning of quote, if you do not report the required CEUs by the anniversary of your certification date, your credentials will be placed on inactive status. BMSC provides a 3-month window for credentialing holders to meet certification requirement for the revocation process begin. You have 3 months before the revocation process begin. End of quote. Beginning of quote, what does inactive status mean? And beginning the quote, and it says, during the inactive status, you cannot promote yourself as an HCS-D certified. If you reactivate your credentials during the inactive period, a reactivation fee applies. Your certification will be reinstated and considered active. If you fail to reactivate by the end of the inactive period, your recertification will be revoked. Did you hear that? So you got to stay up on CEUs, and you will have to come and see me. Yes, you will. Beginning the quote, what is the early audit? Begin the quote, in order to ensure high standards of competencies and continuing education, BMSC will conduct an annual audit, a randomly selected percentage sample of recertification applications submitted from the period reporting period and will be sampled to participate in the audit. If audited, you will be required to provide documentation proof of all CEU activity reported during the reporting period of BMSC within 30 days. End of quote. Begin to quote, if you are unable to provide documentation proof within 30 days, your certification will be considered inactive and you will have 1 year to complete the recertification process by providing the documentation or obtaining the new CEUs. All audit documentation is reviewed for completeness and accuracy by BMSC. If all documentation is complete and an appropriate number of CEUs are earned, you will be notified that your credential is valid until the next recertification due date. If after submission of CEUs is determined that some of all CEUs are not applicable or appropriate, an amount of time will be allowed for you to earn additional replacements for the CEUs. You see, they give you chance to rectify the problem. They want you to keep your workshops, symposiums current. They want you to stay current in the profession because this is a forever changing profession. And at any time when you slough and don't stay up to date with the most current information, you can be writing off of last year's addendums, which has nothing to do with the most current addendums. And you have to stay accurate and up to date. If you are unable to provide the documentation within 30 days, your certification will be considered inactive and you will have 1 year to complete the recertification process by providing the documentation or obtaining the new CEUs, all audit documentation is reviewed for competencies and accuracy by BMSC. If all documentation completed and the appropriate number of CEUs are earned, you will be notified that your credential is valid until the next recertification due date. If after submission CEUs is determined that some of the CEUs are not applicable or appropriate, amount of time will be allowed for you to earn additional replacement CEUs. Can I, end of quote, begin to quote, can I be granted an extension beyond the 90 days of allowed time frame to take an exam? Begin to quote, you may be granted an extension, but only under the following special circumstances. And I quote, end of quote, begin to quote, natural disaster, in the event of bad weather and a natural disaster or another emergency, for example, a test center power outage. Medical or personal emergency. A medical or personal emergency is an unplanned event that prevents you from taking an exam. A medical or personal exam may apply to you or one of your immediate family members, sponsors, child, or parents as defined by the Family Medical Leave Act. Documentation, doctors and notes, emergency room, and obituaries showing why you should not take your exam will be required. End of quote, beginning of quote. If the candidate has met one of the above special circumstances requested as extension for an exam or certification eligibility period and approve the extension, the fees that apply are: number one, first approved request for an extension is $75, valid for 45 days. Number two, and I quote, second and final approved request for an extension is $150, valid for an additional 30 days. No additional extension will be authorized. End of quote. Beginning of quote, can I get a refund after I register for an exam if I choose not to take the exam? Beginning of quote. End of quote, begin of quote. If you decide to cancel your BMSC exam registration, you must notify Decision Health within 30 days prior to your scheduled exam date for a full refund. Candidates registered for BMSC exam have 90 days from the date they register to take an initial or retake exam. If you do not take the exam within those 90 days and do not cancel within the allowed time frame, your registration fee is non-refundable and non-transferable. End of quote. Now, those are some of the questions that they ask, and they're just plain devil's advocate, considering what you might want to know before you come into this profession, because you are definitely governed by an organization. And you are governed by the Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance. And you have to be accountable. And that is why they have the random audits that they will do. And they will periodically do these random audits to see if you are taking the appropriate time to register for these continuing education CEUs at a legitimate place of institute, not just anywhere. You cannot take them in your office with somebody proctoring them to you. I've been a trainer for over 40 years, and being a trainer means that you have got to have good ethics when you're proctoring these exams. You just can't go and let your girlfriend proctor exam for you and know, because the validity of the test will become inadequate and it will have no validity. So therefore, anyone can come in and cheat. So they're making you ethical and making sure that when you come into this organization, you have to practice ethical habits and behaviors. And you must understand that there's a requirement to be a lifetime student. That's why I'm a lifetime student, because I've worked in the category of professional development. And I make sure that all of the women, I govern their files to make sure that they are up on all of their required courses, such as health and safety, health and ed, and making sure that they're taking the right child development courses. And then I call them in and say, hey, we're going to have a workshop this evening, so you don't have to leave your job. You can go right here and do your continuing ed. A lot of places bring in the professional development and have them to do them right on the actual premises. As a professional development, I was sent to Germany to do the professional development for all of the providers who own their own family child care and who also were in centers, to make sure that they were up to date on all their local requirement and their annual requirement CEUs. Sometimes you have to have annual renewals on some of your first aid classes and CPR. Those have to be done at a particular time. And you also have to do a self-assessment of your own center before the staff comes in and does an audit. They give you a chance to go over things that you need to check on to make sure they're up to par. So they give you four warnings so you can get your center up to par. So I am very familiar with why CEUs have to be completed, because I am a professional development by trade and profession. With my curriculum and instruction, it has taught me how to set up a curriculum, an individual curriculum for every individual, whether they want to go in-house and take their classes or go to a traditional institution and enroll in college. And what we did was try to offer as many classes on the site, on the base, so they didn't have to go off and spend a lot of time in a college classroom. Now, AAPC allows their CPC people to get credentialed to become a trainer. And once you become a trainer and take their training program, you also can become a vendor, and you can actually contract to offer their CEUs to their candidates. And that, therefore, you become a professional development, but you have to have a CPC in order to take their training program. And I thought that this would be a suited profession for me, because at my age, it's better for me to look at helping people to get their CEUs and monitoring their records and making sure I keep them up to date about which records they still need to, which workshops they still need to attend. Now, I wanted to also acquaint you with the fact that there is a company, the Decision Health, that offers the ultimate coding and OASIS training. And I'll be going to a couple of those workshops that are coming up. And it's very vital that you have to get your funds right, because this is where you can get some of your CEUs from some of the conference and seminar. You can get those CEUs. And that while you're enjoying the updates and learning about what's new and the addendums, you can also be getting your CEUs. For example, right there in Nashville, Tennessee, in November 12th and the 15th, that's this week, they just offered classes there for the ICD-10 and the OASIS training. In December the 3rd through the 6th in Las Vegas, they will be offering the ICD-10 OASIS training right there for home health. In February the 25th through the 28th in Jacksonville, Florida, they will also repeat that training, the ICD-10 OASIS training from the top home health experts will be there. March 11th through the 14th will be in Dallas, Texas, where they offer the ICD-10 OASIS training from the top home health care expert in the nation. And finally, March 25th through the 28th, they will be offering classes in Chicago, Illinois for the OASIS and ICD-10. Now, there are some private duty national conference expos that's going to be held this week. They've actually had them in the casino in Las Vegas, and they're currently having them now. Then the Home Health Administrators Summit will be in May 15th through the 17th, and that will be in Las Vegas. And that is basically from May 15th through the 17th at the Grand Las Vegas. The agenda package with a strategy for growth and operational efficiency and regulatory compliances and sessions will give you the tools you need to position your business for success or wherever you are going to be working. Then there's 17th Annual Home Health Coding Summit that is going to be held in August 4th through the 9th in San Antonio, Texas. And it says your one-stop for beginner, intermediate, and advanced coding training. Home health coding expert for an agenda package with ICD-10, guidance tools, and best practice to sharpen your coding skill, protect your agencies against audits, and navigate regulations that could endanger your reimbursement. So all of these is to help the reimbursement, how to get more back for the doctor. And this is an overall government thing where at one time the doctors thought that they were not being given their reimbursement, so they started the CPC. And the CPC is what the doctors have started. As you notice, I did not mention anything about DRGs and CPC. So CPT, I don't think will be required when you're doing your coding for OASIS and for home health. Now, you don't quote me on that. That's something I have to check on. But let me get into the ICD booklet because I want you to know that I went over the fees with you. What do you bring with you to the test? It says, important facts about the credentialing examination that you definitely need to know. Number one, and I quote, a separate registration fee is required to sit for the exam on site at the Ultimate Coding at the OASIS 2 training session. Now, some of these classes may have already happened, but they're going to repeat themselves. Number two, HCS-D and HCS-H certification. One is for the hospice, and the other one is for the home health. Certification candidate must bring a current ICD-10 CM, which is this new book. They must bring this book with them to the testing. And I showed it on the introductory class that I did earlier. You must bring this book with you. Can you see it? Complete ICD-10, the complete ICD-10, the complete home health ICD-10 diagnosis code manual. You must bring that with you. Okay. Okay, what else is there? And a photo ID to the test. Books will not be provided, so you have to bring your own book to the exam, to exam candidates, nor is book sharing allowed. You cannot share your book with anyone when you go in among the candidates. We recommend Decision Health, okay, and Complete Home Health ICD-10 CM Diagnosis Coding Manual for 2019, the one I just showed you. In addition to the above reference, and I quote number 3, coding manuals for the the HCS-D, and the HCS-H exam, you may take the FY 2019 official guidelines provided. I'm going to go over that in a minute. Provided into the testing room. Please note only the watermark guidelines providing through this link will be allowed. And what they're talking about is the watermarked guidelines, this book here, where the watermark guideline is. Okay. Guidelines provided through this link and will allow into the testing room as an additional resource. For the HCS-C certification, there are no allowable materials. Okay? I repeat, for the HCS-C certification, there are no allowable materials. So you cannot take any other materials. And delays and denial coding, backlog compliance, anomalies, and decreased cash flow. And the same is true for OASIS. The OASIS documents is guidance is changing, and you need to be prepared. OASIS accuracy is your key to become a 5-star agency, achieving valid basis and full reimbursement. There's no question you need to help. There are no, okay. Decision Health Ultimate Coding and OASIS training is an answer to your ICD-10's ICD-10 coding and OASIS challenges. This series provides ICD-10 coding training and OASIS 2 health education led by the top home health experts, and whether your staff needs to train on the new code and guidance update of the OASIS changes, it is all covered in these intensive boot camps. Now, there are boot camps that you can attend, and that was what I was giving you the dates on. Those are considered boot camps, okay? And we're going to prepare to tackle the FY 2019 code changes and work through the new coding guidelines and ever-changing OASIS guidelines. And that's what we're going to do now. We have to work to that. And Decision Health Ultimate Coding and OASIS training is the answer to your ICD coding and OASIS challenges. And that's why we're going to try to do a little work to go over that. Now, remember I told you that there are 3 reporting agencies that actually do testing. That's the AHCC, and then we have not only the AHCC, we have the Board of Medical Specialty Coding and Compliance that governs them. But we have the AACP, HHIMA, and the AHCC, okay? The HHIMA, AACC, and AAPC, okay? They're all separate for governing their testing, okay? And whichever one you decide to go with, if you decide not to go with the actual OASIS or home health, then you would not be using this book. But for the benefit of the fact that I am teaching this under home health, because that is a specialty that I will be obtaining. Now, mind you now, if that is not what you are trying to obtain and you want a CPC, then it's different from this. Now, let's get ready to get into our guidelines. And I started reading some of the information before. I'm going to start with section 1. Now, this helps me so I can go back and retrain. So I'm doing this as a selfish tactic as a benefit of me being able to replay my own tapes and go over some of the updates. So bear with me on this. And if any of you out there would like to follow along, have your own guidelines, please do. You can mark these water books up because you'll be able to take them into the testing with you, but no materials. Section number 1, and this is on page 8 of 120, if you would like to follow along. And section 1, and it reads, and I quote, the Convention of General Coding Guidelines and Chapter Specific Guidelines. And I quote, the Convention General Guidelines and Chapter Specific Guidelines are applicable to all healthcare settings unless otherwise indicated. The convention and instructions of the classification takes precedence over the guidelines, end of quote. That means it takes precedence. The conventions take precedence over these guidelines. A, beginning to quote, conventions for the ICD-10. The conventions for the ICD-10 are the general rules for use of the classification. Independent of the guidelines, these conventions are incorporated within the alphabetic index and tabular list of the ICD-10-CM as instructional notes, end of quote. Number 1, begin to quote, the alphabetic index and tabular list. The ICD-10-CM is divided into the alphabetic index and the alphabetic list of terms and their correspondence code, and the tabular list, a structured list of codes divided into chapters based on body system or condition. The alphabetic index consists of the following parts. Number 1, the index of diseases and injury. Number 2, the index of internal causes of injury. Number 3, the tab of neoplasms and the tabs of drugs and chemicals, end of quote. And that's what I read to you on my other segment. See section IC2, General Guideline. See section IC.19. Advise effects and poisoning, underdosing, and toxic effects. So you might want to know what underdosing is. Maybe the doctor prescribed 15 milligrams TID 3 times a day, and you decided to take a half of the tablets. Instead of TID, you take BID twice a day. That would be underdosing. Okay. Okay. Underdosing and toxic effect. Number 2, begin to quote, format and structure. The ICD-10-CM tabular list contains categories, subcategories, codes, characters, 4 categories, subcategories, and codes may be either a letter or a number. All categories are 3 characters. A 3-character category that has no number, that it has no further subdivision, is equivalent to a code. Subcategories are either 4 or 5 characters. Codes may be 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 characters. That is, each level of subdivision after a character is subcategory. The final level of subdivision is a code. Codes that have applicable 7 characters will still refer to as codes, not subcategories. A code that has an applicable 7 character is considered invalid without the 7 character, end of quote. Begin to quote, the ICD-10-CM uses an indent formation for case in reference, end of quote. Beginning to quote, number 3, use of codes for reporting purposes. And it says, begin to quote, for reporting purposes only, codes are permissible, not category or subcategories, and may any applicable 7th character is required, end of quote. Number 4, beginning of quote, placeholder characters. The ICD-10-CM utilizes a placeholder character X. The X is used as a placeholder at certain codes to allow for further expansion. An example of this is the poisoning advised effect and underdosing code category T36-T50. End of quote. Beginning of quote. Where a placeholder exists, the X must be used in order for the code to be considered a valid code. End of quote. Number 5, beginning of quote, the 7th characters. Certain ICD-10, CM, make sure this is on. Okay. Beginning of quote, certain ICD-10, CM categories have applicable 7th character. The applicable 7th character is required for all codes within the category or as noted in the tabular list instruct. The 7th character must always be the 7th character in the data field. If a code that requires a 7th character is not 6th character, a placeholder X must be used to fill in the empty character. End of quote. Number 6, beginning of quote, abbreviations. A, alphabetic index abbreviation, NEC. Not elsewhere classified is what that stands for. This abbreviation in the alphabetic index represents other specified when a specified code is not available for a condition. The alphabet index directs the coder to the other specified code in the tabular list. NOS, not otherwise specified. This abbreviation is the equivalent of unspecified, end of quote. Beginning of quote. Number B, tabular list abbreviation, NEC, not elsewhere classified. This abbreviation in the tabular list represents other specified when a specified code is not available for a condition. The tabular list includes an NEC entry under a code to identify the code as the other specified code, end of quote. Begin of quote, NSO, not otherwise specified. This abbreviation is the equivalent of unspecified, end of quote. Number 7, punctuation, beginning of quote. Brackets are used in the tabular list to ensure synonyms, alternative wording of explanatory phrases. Brackets are used in the alphabetic index to identify manifestation codes, end of quote. Beginning of quote. Parentheses are used in both the alphabetic index tabular list to ensure supplementary words that may be present or absent in the presence of a disease or procedure without affecting the code number to which it is assigned. The term within the parentheses are referred to as non-essential modifiers. Non-essential modifiers. The non-essential modifiers in the alphabetic index to disease apply to subterms following a main term expert when a non-essential modifier and a sub-entry are mutually exclusive. The sub-entry takes precedence. For example, in the ICD-10-CM alphabetic index, under the main term entries, acute is a non-essential modifier and chronic is a sub-entry and is a case of the essential, non-essential modifier acute does not apply to the sub-entry chronic, end of quote. Beginning of quote, colons are used in the tabular list after an incomplete term which needs one or more of the modifiers following the colon to make an assignable to a given category, end of quote. Beginning of quote, number 8, use of and, set section I, A, dot 1 4 dot. Use of the term and. Number 9, beginning of quote, end of quote, beginning of quote. Other and unspecified codes, other codes. A, other codes. Codes beginning of code. Codes entitled other or other specifier are used when the information in the medical records provide detail for which a specific code does not exist. Alphabetic index entries and NEC in the line designated other codes in the tabular list. These alphabetic index entries represent specific diseases entries for which no specific code exists, so the term is included within an other code, end of quote. Number B, begin of quote, unspecified codes. Codes entitled unspecified are for use when the information in the medical coding is insufficient to assign a more specific code. Those categories which an unspecified code is not provided, the other specified code may represent both other and unspecified, end of quote. Begin to quote, see section I.B, see section I.B.18, use of sign, symptoms, unspecified codes, end of quote. Number 10, beginning of quote, include notes. This note appears immediately after 3-character codes title to further define or give example of the content of the category, end of quote. Begin of quote, number 11, inclusion terms. List of terms included under some code. These terms are the condition for which that code is to be used. The term may be symptoms of the code's title, or the case of the other specified codes, and the terms are a list of the various conditions assigned to that code. The inclusion terms are not necessarily exclusive. Additional terms found only in the alphabetic index may also be assigned to a code, end of quote. Beginning of quote, number 12, excluded notes. The ICD-10 CM has 2 types of excluded notes. Each type of note has a different definition for use, but they are all similar in that they indicate that the code exclusion from each others are independent of each other, end of quote. Now, as you can see, they're talking about specific things like other codes, unspecified codes, inclusion terms, exclusion term, and the use of the term and. So you must know how to read and read with precision, and don't overlook any of those terms such as and, unspecified codes, include notes, include terms, exclude notes. You must be able to know how to assign the code based on those terms. And as we go on, excluded, and I quote, excluded number 1. A type, and I quote, a type of excludes notes is a pure exclude note. It means not coded here, not coded here. I repeat, an excluded 1 note indicates that the code excluded should never be used at the same time as the code above the excluded note. And you need to note that and highlight that so that you know you don't fall into making that mistake. Exclude is used when two conditions cannot occur together. The oxymoron when two conditions cannot occur together, such as a congenital form versus an acquired form of the same condition. Isn't that an oxymoron? A congenital form versus an acquired form of the same condition. End of quote. Beginning of quote. An exception to the exclusion 1 definition is the circumstances when the two conditions are unrelated to each other. If it is not clear whether the two conditions involving the exclusion 1 notes are related to or not, query the provider. Okay, it says notes are related to or not, query the provider. For example, code F45.8 other somatoforms disorders has an excluded 1 note for sleep-related sleep-related teeth grinding, a G47.63. Because teeth grinding is an exclusion term under F45.8, only of these two codes should be assigned for teeth grinding. However, psychogenic dysmenorrhea is also an exclusion term under F45.8, and a patient could have both this condition and sleep-related teeth grinding. In this case, the two conditions are clearly unrelated to each other, and in this case, the two conditions are clearly unrelated to each other, and so it would be appropriate to report F45.8 and G47.63 together. End of quote. Beginning of quote. Number B, excluded 2. A type 2 excludes note represent not included here. I repeat, a type 2 exclusion note represents not included here. As you run up on that, you might want to highlight that because that is a note that you want to take in consideration. An excluded 2 note indicates that the condition excluded is not part of the condition represented by the code, but a patient may have both conditions at the same time when an exclusion 2 note appears under a code. It is acceptable to use both the code and the excluded code together. It is acceptable to use both of them together. Okay? At the same time, when an exclusion note appears under the code, it is acceptable to use both codes and excluded codes together when appropriate. So remember that. Now, end of quote, begin of quote number 13, Ethology Manifestation Convention, code first, use additional codes and in diseases classified elsewhere notes. Let me repeat, Ethology Manifestation Convention, code first, use additional codes and diseases classified elsewhere notes. Begin to quote. Certain conditions have both an underlying ethology and multiple body system. Manifestations due to the underlying ethology for such condition, the ICD-10-CM has a code convention that requires the underlying condition be sequenced first, if applicable, followed by manifestation. Whether such a combination exists. There is a use additional code note at the etymology code and a code first note at the manifestation code. These instructional notes indicate the proper sequencing order of the code. You must note that these instructional notes indicate the proper sequencing code order of the code. Etymology followed by manifestation. Etymology followed by manifestation. In most cases, the manifestation code will have in the code title. In diseases classified elsewhere. In most cases, manifestation codes will have in the code title, in diseases classified elsewhere. Please make a note of that. Codes with this title are a component of the Etymology Manifestation Convention. The code title indicates that it is manifestation code. In diseases classified elsewhere, codes are never permitted to be used as first list or principal diagnosis. I repeat, the code title indicates that it is manifestation code. In diseases classified elsewhere, codes are never permitted to be used as first list or principal diagnosis code. Okay? Codes are never permitted to be used as first list or principal diagnosis code. Remember that. They must be used in conjunction with an underlying condition be listed. Underlying condition. C category F02, dementia, and other diseases classified elsewhere. For example, of this convention, end of quote, beginning of quote, there are manifestation codes that do not have in disease classified elsewhere in the title. For such codes, there is a use conditional code at the etymology code and a code list note at the manifestation code, and the rule for sequencing applies. End of quote. Begin to quote. In addition to the note in the tabular list, these conditions also have a specific alphabetic index entry structure. In the alphabetic index, both conditions are listed together with the etymology code first, followed by the manifestation code. I repeat, the etymology code first, followed by the manifestation code. In brackets, the code in brackets is always to be sequenced second. Remember that. The code that's in bracket is always to be sequenced second. Example of the etymology manifestation convention is dementia and Parkinson's disease. In the alphabetic index code, G20 is listed first, followed by code F02.80 or F0.81. In brackets, codes F20 represents the underlying etymology, Parkinson's disease, and must be sequenced at first. I repeat, the Parkinson's disease and it must be sequenced at first. Whereas F02.80 and F02.81 represent the manifestation of dementia in diseases classified elsewhere with or without behavior disturbance. I repeat, and that is in disease classified elsewhere with or without behavior disturbance. End of quote. Codes first and use additional codes noted are also used as sequencing rules in the classification for certain codes that are not part of an etymology manifestation combination. See section 1I.B 7. Multiple codes for a single condition, end of quote. And And beginning to quote number 14, the word and should be interpreted to mean either and or. I repeat, the word and. The word and should be interpreted to mean either and or when it appears in a title. For example, cases of tuberculosis of the bone, tuberculosis of joints, and tuberculosis of bones and joints are classified to subcategory A 18.0, tuberculosis of bones and joints. With, the term with, end of quote, begin of quote, number 15, with. The word with or in should be interpreted to mean associated with or during to when it appears in a code title in the alphabetic index, either under a main term or subterm, or an instructional note in the tabular. The classification pursues a causal relationship between the two conditions linked by these terms in the alphabetic index or tabular index. These conditions should be coded as related events in the absence of provider documentation, explicitly linking them unless the documentation clearly states the conditions are unrelated or when another guideline exists that specifically requires a documented link between two conditions, e.g., septic guidelines for acute organ dysfunction that is not clearly associated with the septics. End of quote. Beginning of quote. For conditions not specifically linked by these related terms in the classification or when the guideline required that a linkage between two conditions be specifically documented, providers and document must link the condition in order to code them as related. The doctor, I repeat, the provider must link that the condition in order for them to be related. Okay, so we have to rely on what the doctor says, what the reader's notes. The words with the alphabetic index is sequenced immediately following the main term, not in the alphabetic order. End of quote. Beginning of quote, number 16, C and C also. And it says, beginning of quote, the C instructions follow a main term in the alphabetic index indicator that another term should be referred. I repeat, the C and the C also. The C instruction follows a main term in the alphabetic index indicates that another term should be referred. Another term should be referred. In it is necessary to go to the main term referred with the C note to locate the correct code. It's necessary to go to the C note to locate the correct code. End of quote. Begin of quote. A C also instructs following a main term in the alphabetic index instruction that there is another main term that may also be referred that may provide additional alphabetic index entries that may be useful. It is not necessary to follow the C also note when the original main term provides the necessary code. Do you hear that? The C also instructions follow a main term in the alphabetic index, and it said, it is not necessary to follow the C also note when the original main term provides the necessary code. Number 17, code also notes. A code also note instructs that two codes may be required to fully describe a condition that condition, but this note does not provide sequencing direction. The sequencing depends on the circumstances of the encounter. I repeat, the sequencing depends on the circumstances of the encounter. End of quote. Number 18, beginning of quote, default codes. A code listed next to a main term in the ICD-10-CM alphabetic index is referred to as a default code. If it's next to the ICD-10-CM alphabetic index, it is a default code. The default code represents that condition that is most commonly associated with main terms or is the unspecified code for the condition. If a condition is documented in a medical code, for example, appendicitis, without any additional information such as acute or chronic, the default code should be assigned. I repeat, the default code should be assigned. Now, end of quote. Number 19, beginning of quote. Code assignment and clinical criteria. Begin to quote, the assignment of a diagnosis code is based on the provider's diagnostic statement that the condition exists, the provider's statement that the patient has particular conditions is sufficient. Code assignment is not based on clinical criteria used by the provider to establish the diagnosis. I repeat, code assignment and clinical criteria. The assignment of the diagnosis code is based on the provider's diagnostic statement that the condition exists. The provider's statement that the patient has a particular condition is sufficient. Code assignment is not based on clinical criteria. So you do not have to base clinical criteria used by the provider to establish the diagnosis. End of quote. Beginning of quote. B, general coding guidelines. Number 1, beginning of quote. Locating the code in the ICD-10-CM to select the code in the classification that responds to a diagnosis or reason for visit documentation in a medical record. First, locate the term in the alphabetic index, and then verify the code in the tabular list. Read and be guided by instructional notation that appear in both alphabetic index and the tabular list. Now, let's stop for a minute here, because we've been reading so far. We have read 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have read 4 pages so far, and we're going to stop on page 12, and we'll start again on page 12. Let's do some discussion. Okay, let me say this. It's going to take a lot of reading, and your reading has to be up to par. And you might want to read your information into a recorder as you are doing these updates, and then go back and listen to it, to reiterate it. I used to record my notes, then copy my notes from the tape recorder, re-listen to my notes throughout the week, and then the notes will be ingrained. These are like notes because they're updated information for your home health ICD-10-CM. These are the updates that are in the book. And remember, your conference information takes precedence over these guidelines, okay? However, they have given you the updates to put in place of your book, so when you run into something that everything in this book, because it's a brand new book, it should be updated, because they've updated it also in this addendum. Now, we will have study guides that we will work with. We will do some sample questions and look at some summary reports, and we will do some of the examples that they have for cases, and we will perform examining the files of a particular patient and actually doing the codes so we can get the practice, because that's what this class is all about. It's a review for practice. It's not going to be all reading. I'm going to expect that you will do some of your reading outside. I am doing this reading so I can go back and listen to the recording. But we're going to do some exercise. So hopefully next time when we come back together, we're going to try to apply some of these rules, like the and inclusion rule, as we talked about, the inclusion and the inclusion terms, exclusion terms, the other codes, the exclusion 1, exclusion 2, unexpected codes. And we're also going to look at the terminology of and or see also, code also notes, and default codes. We're going to look at all of those default codes, and we're going to look at the term with. How do you use the term with or? So we're going to apply these to some of the samples of questions that we have. And I don't have the addendum, the tag along addendum with the sample questions in there, but I'm going to order the sample questions and order the answer, so we'll know what the answer is and how they derived at the answer, so we can get an idea of to track where they're going with this and what process did they take to get to the outcome solution, so we'll know that we're on the right path. And this is a review. And they used to have a review through the library where you can get samples of the old tests and review and know what those scenarios were, but they were antiquated and old, and you never know if they changed them, but they said they were somewhat like that. I don't know if they still have them in the library or not, but there is a review package that I will be ordering, and I suggest you order your review package also, because you're going to need that to use samples. The more exercises and examples you have of working real cases will make you more efficient. And the sooner you get into your book and flip through it and know how to go to the sections very quickly, the quicker and speed that you will develop. Because remember, this is a time test. And I'm not certain if this one has 150 questions or what those numbers are on this test, but I do know that they will give us their number of tests and what types of questions and how many in certain categories, but we have to be fast and quick so we can get those answers done fast, because remember, you're working against the clock. And a lot of people know their information, but they're too slow to complete it. And you need at least 70 percentile on this exam. So you want to make sure you work with speed so that you can finish the test, and therefore you know that you would have covered all of those questions, and hopefully you can gain 70 percentile or better on the test. And we want to teach to 85 percentile is teaching to mastery. So when you get 85%, you know you've mastered something. So we want to teach to mastery. And as I was telling you, this is not CPC review, and this is not the CCPP review. This is the Home Health ICD-10 CM for OASIS, for hospice, home health, and also not only hospice, but home health, for hospice, and for, what else did I say? And this is done up under the AHCC. And we must remember that AHCC is different, and it is governed by an organization that is the board. A board governs this organization to make sure things are done right. The BMSCS governs this particular AHCC. to make sure that they're in compliance, okay? And we have to understand that we are looking at the OASIS training under ICD-10. And ICD-10 is a generic, okay? But some people do ICD-10 for outpatient hospital and inpatient. We're not doing outpatient or inpatient. We're doing the home health for ICD-10, and we are doing also the OASIS for ICD-10. Let's see what else we're doing here. And the home health and the hospice. So our category is dealing with a different breed of people that, I don't know if there is such a thing as a surgery care, but I do know that the home health care is booming and it is growing, and you're going to find more and more home health submitting claims and submitting coding summary documentations to get paid, because a lot of the home health and I guess you would also say the assisted living and also the skilled nursing home are cropping up all over the place. So you might have more home health care than you do hospitals. And there are going to be more and more of those administrators willing to accept you if you have credentials and give you a chance, because they need the help. And sometimes the salaries may be a little bit condensed, a lot less higher than some of those outpatients and hospital coders, okay? Now, I've worked in a hospital before, so I know what it's all about, and I'm not really missing anything because I have charted and I have read the doctor's orders and all of the doctor's orders. I know about the summary report and how to put together the actual files of a patient in the hospital and how to read them and to extract them. So for someone who's never worked in the hospital before, they might feel like they're missing out. But once you get a handle of the home health hospital, of the home health files, you will see it's a whole different breed and a different horse of a different color. I do know that we are going to spend quite a bit of time together. I'm going to have to stay focused on this. I'm going to give up some of the other reviews that I do on YouTube and try to stick closely with this until we finish this whole addendum of the ICD-10-CM official guidelines for coding and reporting for FY 2019, till we've gone through it and that we thoroughly know what's in this book. And with us thoroughly knowing what's in this book, then we have to get very, very acquainted with our actual complete home health textbooks for ICD-9 for diagnosing the coding. And this is pretty easy to keep up with once you put your tabs on it. You know that you go to your tabular system to look up the diagnosis, and then go to your index to see where you find the code, and then go to the specific chapters to look where to narrow down the code. And remember, you are looking for all those terms that can show up, exclusion 1, exclusion 2, and or also, and you're looking for the term with, and what does that mean? Do you code what you see? Can you code the two things that occur simultaneously? Looking for the word see and see also, and code also, default codes, and code assignment, clinical criteria. And you locate a code in the ICD-10. That's where you locate the code at. It says here, locating a code in the ICD-10-CM to select the code in the classification that responds to a diagnosis or reason for visit documented in a medical records. First, located the term in the alphabetic index, like I told you. Locate the term in the alphabetic index, and then verify the code in the tabular list. You must verify your code in the tabular list. Then read and be guided by the instructional notation that appear in both the alphabetic index and the tabular list. You have to do that. This is how you code. It is essential to use both the alphabetic index and the tabular list when locating and assigning codes. The alphabetic index does not always provide the full code. Selection of the full code, including literary and any applicable seventh character, can only be noted in the tabular list. A dash at the end of an alphabetic index entry indicates that additional characters are required. I repeat, a dash indicates additional characters are required. Even in a dash is not included at the alphabetic index entry. It is necessary to refer to the tabular list to verify that seventh character is required. Okay, so we go to our alphabetic index, verify the diagnosis, and then we go to the, after we go to the alphabetic index, we go to our tabular listing, okay? After we go to our alphabetic index, then we have to verify the code in the tabular listing. And then we read and be guided by the instructions. We have to be guided by the instruction, both in the alphabetic index and the tabular. Okay? It's been great talking with you, and thank you so much for going on this journey with me. You've been listening to Maddie Harvey's baby sister. I am Omiinka 7, also known as Sherelle M. Garth, and I am your buddy. I am your language buddy coach. I am your language buddy coding coach. Okay, that's a mouthful. And I will be guiding you for the next couple of weeks. I can't say which day we're going to stick to, but you will find me on the YouTube and you will be able to participate in the review. You've just participated in the first review. I gave the introduction. Go out and listen to the introduction, and you will see that the introduction will help you to get through your review. And you might feel the confidence of attending one of the conferences and participating, and you'll be well prepared to work through your FY 2019 because you will be familiar with some of the things that I taught you. So when you go to these conferences and you work through your updated guidelines, remember that there's something that takes precedence over the guideline, and that is the conferences. As it said at the beginning, it told you that at the beginning that there is something that will take precedence over it. It said the convention for the ICD-10-CM. The convention for the ICD-10-CM are the general rules for use of the classification independence of the guideline. These conventions are incorporated within the alphabetic index and the tabular. That's where you'll find the conventions in the alphabetic index and the tabular list of the ICD-CM in instructional notes, okay? It says the convention, general guidelines, and chapter specified guidelines are applicable to all healthcare settings unless otherwise indicated. The conventions and instructions of the classification take precedence over the guideline. So that means this book takes precedence over the guideline. And on that note, we are going to end this session. And as I told you, be prepared to learn as much as you can because you are on your way to developing your skills and developing you a niche and a specialty. If nothing else, go out and listen to my medical terminology course on Shoe Talk and get an understanding for medical terms. If you're having a difficult time with that, you must have a rooted foundation in medical terms. If you don't feel competent, go out and listen to that particular segment so you can get rooted in the prerequisite of medical term. I do recommend you take anatomy and physiology, which I'm going to be offering later, that will give people a more foundation on all of the systems, like the skeleton system, the integumentary system, the glandular system, the cardiac system, and the integumentary system. So you can get a better understanding of all of the systems to help you better understand what did the doctor treat the patient for? What was the diagnosis? What did the person come in complaining about? What was his condition? And what did the doctor treat the patient for? Those are two things we're going to ask. What was the diagnosis and what did the doctor treat the patient for? And procedure codings, with this particular program, we are mainly looking at the diagnosis and not the procedure because we don't have CPT codes. But it's very important, they don't require that, but it's very important that we get a ground rooting in all of the guidelines so we better understand how to go to that section and how to decipher whether we code all the way out to the 7-digit and how do we find that 7-digit. So as a professional in this line of medical records, as going for the RHA, the Registered Health Information Technician. I am a technician. I do have my actual label. And when I finish with this exam, I would be satisfied and rooted as a person who's completed all of the required classes and the internship as well as the exam. But nevertheless, walk with me now as I go through the tunnels of looking through how to prepare for this exam, which I know I am going to be successful at because I have learned these things thoroughly and have completed these prerequisites over years ago, and they are coming back to me even at my age. And I hope that you can retain the information, get everything ready to sit for the exam. We're going to tackle this exam. I won't be able to go in with you when you take your exam, but we can email each other to let each other know upon us finishing the review how many of you actually took the exam and challenged it. Just think, if you take the exam and challenge it and pass and become credentialed, without having to go take all of the classes that I took. I spent 2 years in school taking all of those classes in ICD-CM, ICD-9-CM, and CPT, and health information, and so on, anatomy, physiology, pathology. I spent 2 years in school. Because I had so many liberal arts from my bachelor's, I was able to transfer those over. I didn't have to take those, of course. But I am prepared to take this test. I know I am. I just have to be familiar with the guidelines so I can better equip myself to use my book. Once I spend the intimate time with my book and learning how to use the alphabetic index and using not only the alphabetic index, as we were saying, where were we at? The alphabetic index, and then verifying the code in the tabular list, and then reading, be ready to read and be guided by the instructional notations, and that appear in all of the alphabetic index and the tabular. I want to thank you for spending this hour with me, and I'm sure you'll be more than blessed. This profession is wide open, and once you get the alphabets behind your name, you become proficient in your area. Excuse me. Your areas are limited, and you start mastering the actual coding process. You'll feel good about yourself. You have a skill that no one can take away from you. And I hope to invite so many people in a session when we get warmed up here and I complete the guidelines, then we're going to get right into the book and then we're going to start coding. And then you'll be real bona fide coders. All you have to do is take the test then and master at least 70% of the questions. I would say master 85% because that would be to mastery. But nevertheless, your medical term is going to come in handy. So go out and brush up on the medical term that I have on TalkShoe, where I did the section on medical terminology. I am going to be teaching another medical terminology class. I don't know when, because this is more pertinent and important. And I am going to be teaching an anatomy and physiology course so that you can retain information and recall it, because that's what it's going to take when you start coding. Can you retain those various different systems, the integumentary system, the cardiology system, the skeletal system, the glandular system. And we're going to go over some of those periodically, and I'll get my other books out. I am wired for this type of work because I did it once before. A lot of my sisters are involved in this type of work. They're third-party administrators. Some of them are claim processor, and some of them are in the communication department. So we all kind of started out in this profession, and I kind of strayed away because I got a job offer in the classroom. But in the evenings, I still maintain to work as an adjunct. And that's why I stayed so connected to it, because I taught classes in the evening time in the 1-year certificate coding specialist class. And I hope to bring that program here in the state of Indiana. It was an outstanding program with the apprenticeship attachment, and the students did very well, and they found employment because they were coding specialists. And that was almost, 15 years ago, and I would imagine a lot of them have gone back and got their 2-year associate degree. I was going for the 2-year associate degree. There is a bachelor's degree on the Registered Health Information Administrator, and that is a baccalaureate degree. Then there's the Registered Health Administrator Technician. That is a 2-year associate degree, the one that I went for. And it'd be terribly hard to repeat all those classes again because it's been so long, over 10 years for me to repeat them and just take the classes that I haven't had. I was told by my instructor it would be better just to go and do the review and sit for the exam and challenge the exam. And I can still get a credential. And I've always will have the credit for those classes that I completed. So I can go ahead and complete my dream job of being an actual professional development who offers allied health courses for renewing your license in medical coding. And I'm very close to it. And even at the age that I am now, I'm very close to obtaining this dream job that I often wanted to do, was to work remotely from my home as a consultant and a contracted individual. So we're going to have a lot of fun together. And like I was saying, that once you become a member of this association, there is a job bank where you can, once you get your license and get credential, you can go right online to the job bank because you have membership. You must get membership in this organization, the AHCC. And once you get your membership, which is governed by the BMSC, and that's a home of the BMSC. And once you get your credentials, you can go online and you can go to their job site, and then you can interview for those particular positions that are available. So once you pay for your membership, you are capable of utilizing their website. And there are many conferences, seminars, symposiums that you can attend. You're going to meet great people that you're going to rub shoulders with in conferences, and you'll be a professional. And I've always liked the term professional, and I've been a professional for many, many years. I am credentialed and certified as a certified teacher K through 9. I have a certification in English as a second language. So that's why I started the buddy school to incorporate the language of medical terminology with my buddy school so I can still extend myself out to those children who cannot read and helping them. So we're going to put it all together and make it all legitimate. But the main thing you will know is you got your buddy coach here to assist you. I am your language buddy coach for coding, and I will be assisting you. And I will have to cut back on spending time on issues that I've been lecturing on, and I'm going to spend most of my lecturing time on this until we get ready for the review. And that'll probably be into the end of this year and the beginning of next year to get myself ready to go in there and to sit for that exam. I want to be proficient. I want to make sure that you're proficient. And the only way you can get proficient, you must study and apply yourself to study. And I've been a long life student, so I'm accustomed to studying. I have good study habits, and I can teach you to have the same thing. And it's very vital that you should understand that you're with a champion right now, and a champion that tries to master all of her book work. And I did very, very good in my graduate degree. I graduated distinguished in my undergraduate, and I graduated summa cum laude in my graduate, all A's and 1B. So I'm a hard taskmaster, and I do believe in mastering things. So you're with good company right now. I know that there's a lot of people out on the internet that are teaching coding classes, but they're not teaching this. They're not teaching home health in the specialty area. And we're going to go from home health to hospice to the not only home health, but also to some of the specialty areas. I hope to get involved in some of the specialty areas. And initially, I started under tumor registry and wanted to be trained in tumor registry, which deals with cancer registry and focuses in on the cancer victim. That is also an interest of mine, to find out how to track these candidates who have had a history of cancer and to see how they fare. So you are with one of the best, and you will be spending some time with me. And as I started out before, there was a foundational course of the medical term that everyone needed to have. I couldn't start indirectly with the coding review because I did not have the books, had to save my money up to pay for these books. I mean, this was this book was over $200, and luckily I had a discount code so I could get the book for $201.10. And, off my allowance, I was able to save for the book, and I still have another book that I need to get as a complimentary book for review. And I suggest you start saving your money because you're going to have to buy this book, and it'll be well worth it. It's going to help you establish your ability to be a professional and to work in the allied health profession. Yes, of course, you're going to have to do a lot of studying, but you won't have to go back and take a 2-year associate degree. You're going to have to put the money out there to take your classes such as anatomy and physiology and pathology if you think you need those classes. I think you mainly need anatomy and physiology and medical term, and then to take the ICD-10. Now, that's just 3 classes that can perfect you in a field that's wide open. There's a great demand for coders out there and specialty coders especially. So as I told you, there are a number of different specialty coders, that the cardiology specialist, the pain management specialist, there are a number of different specialty. So you can get all these alphabets behind your name and become a professional. And then don't stop at that. Go after the baccalaureate degree. It looks better on your credential, and it'll help you get paid more. Now, I know that with my master's degree, it opens up greater opportunities for me to be paid much, much more and to do some supervisory work. But I am not interested in the supervisory work. That is a drudgerous job, and you have to stay on top of people. And I'm not that kind of person where I want to be on top of someone demanding that they get their production up. I've done that before, been there, done that. Okay. So Once again, you are with your Omi Inca, and I am broadcasting on the ICD-10-CM, the official guidelines for coding and reporting, the FY 2019. This is the 2019 update. No one else out there is teaching on this right now, and we're teaching on the home health for hospice and home health care. And I want you to know that there are specialty areas that you can also pursue once you finish this training and have mastered this. Look up the income of a coder, a specialty coder. Look up the income and see where you can go financially. What can you do with this if you wanted to work in the office and you didn't want to do remote work? See where you can go. Can you code in the hospice center? Can you code in the home health center? See where you can go with this. And can you become a specialist? It's very vital that you advance yourself if you're a young person. And I'm talking to those seniors out there. If you're over 50 and you're a senior and you want a trade and a skill, come in and spend time with me, and I will help you get a trade and a skill. I want you to know that in helping you to get these trades and skill, you will be getting these skills and trades for free right now. And we haven't decided to put any prices on it, but it will help you to get into a profession that's wide open and that's marketable. And I am talking to you seniors out there, and I'm going to get some of my relatives connected so they can pick up a credential. They just don't know. It just calls for reviewing and studying and having confidence that you can sit down in that testing area. As I told you, there was 3 different ways you can take it. You can take it through a conference. You must sign up, I think, 90 days in advance, or you must sign up. I think in order to get your money back and get a refund, it's 90 days. But you must sign up for one of the conferences, and you can take your exam there. You can take it in person, where you go to the site where they're offering it at one of your local junior college and take the test. Or you can take the test. I think there might be something online. I'm not certain. I know it's 3 ways, but you have to pay a fee, and I went over all of that. And then you have to do a review, a strict review, so that you can prepare to sit for this exam. And it requires at least 70% for passing. But it's very vital that you should know, for you seniors who are looking for something else to do and would like to work from your home remotely, here's the time to get credentialed. I expect to see you seniors signing up and coming into this class and spending time so you can pick up a profession and a skill. Thank you so much for spending this hour with me, and I hope I've covered everything in this first segment. And we will meet back again, possibly on a Saturday, if not during the week. But we will cover at least an hour's worth of material so we can get through this guideline. And remember to go online and to look up ICD-10-CM under the home health, and preferably up under AHCC, under the board of BMSC. And when you go, make sure I got that right. Under the BMSC, making sure that you sign up to purchase your book and get the review material. Okay, you don't have to sign up for the test right away. You're in the review mode, you're studying. So get your material, save your money, and go out online, see if there's any coupons that you can ascertain. If not, I think the book is $219 without tax, but it's well worth it. It's something that's going to be your deliverer. It will get you in places you never thought you could get in, and you'll travel in high places and be credentialed as a specialist. And you'll be able to go out and get employment and redo your resume and indicate that you have trained under Sherelle M. Garth. And I am a trainer, and I've been recognized in Blue Cross Blue Shield. I've trained over, 20 providers, claim processors, and training them in medical terminology, and training them also in how to process a claim. And I am a claim trainer as well. I train in how to process the claims, and that's where I started with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So nevertheless, get those skills behind you and you'll be able to find employment. Thank you so very much for joining me. And do join me next Saturday. And we're going to say around 3 o'clock next Saturday. Don't hold me on that. I might come on earlier during the week, but we're going to try to stick to at least a Saturday day. Thank you. And Odabo, Baba Booey to you, y'all. Great evening.